so everybody gets a chance to know each other, and then we can go forward. So it actually is 6:30 right now. So maybe we will start. I'll start by introducing myself, and maybe we'll introduce committee members, and then the other staff that are here tonight, they can introduce themselves as their agenda items come up. So I'm Derek O'Shea. I work for the City Clerk's Department, and I am the committee clerk. So I will be helping with all aspects of organization and administration for the committee. And I'm just going to go around my screen and ask people to introduce themselves. So first, Mary Jo.
My name is Mary Jo Curie, and I am the executive director at the Downtown Kingston BIA. Hi, Lindsay. I just saw you. Yeah, I've been here for 4 months and looking forward to in Kingston and looking forward to this project.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Next on my list is Jordan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Morelli. I'm a faculty member at Queen's, and yeah.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Jordan. Short and sweet. I like it. Next, we'll go to John.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John DiPaolo. I'm my day job is with the United Way. I'm their vice president of corporate services, and pleased to be a part of this committee and helping out.
Thanks, John. Next is Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Foster, and I'm just a regular citizen who wants to do her part. I'm thrilled to be on this committee. It's very exciting, and I love seeing Mary Jo. Mary Jo and I have known each other for a zillion years. And Jordan, nice to see you too. Mm-hmm. We're on another association together, so lots of familiar faces. And Derek, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Kingston is indeed a small world. Thank you, Lindsay. And next is Indira. Indira's video might be a bit frozen there. I think she's very good at being still. So I'll move on to Helen next.
Hi there, Helen Chadwick, Associate Registrar and representing St. Lawrence College.
Thank you, Helen. And then the last committee member I have is Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Seton. I've just lived in Kingston most of my adult life, and also just a regular citizen, excited to see how I can help out.
Thank you for joining us. Jessica and Lindsay as our new members. Our final member is Laura Turner. She is the former member of Councillor who was selected to serve on the committee, but again, she was unable to join us tonight, so she will be joining us for future meetings. So at this point, I see Indira, I think, has left and is going to try and rejoin. So I'll go ahead and start the meeting officially at this point. And the first item of business we have is the election of officers. So this is the selection of the chair and vice chair. So, and there's Indira joining us now. So maybe I'll wait for her to get connected and give her an opportunity to introduce herself. So Indira, if you wouldn't mind, a quick introduction for our new members.
Sorry about that. I was having some connectivity problems. Thanks, Derek. I'm Indira Narayan. I'm one of the directors, pardon me, in HR at Kingston Health Sciences Centre and Providence Care.
Excellent. Thank you, Indira. So jumping back to where I was going, the election of officers, this is where the committee selects its chair and vice chair. So I did receive from Laura an interest in serving as chair. She's not able to be here tonight, but we can put her forth for consideration. Does anybody else have an interest in serving as chair? Helen, I see you have your hand up.
Sorry, yeah, Derek, and not an interest in serving as chair, but did we need to take care of item 8D first, which is the consideration of primary and alternate represented for the education sector?
Can actually do that as it comes up in the agenda. It doesn't impact any of the business we're doing. And I believe that you and Heather Cole have discussed that you would be the primary representative, correct?
Okay, yeah, but I just, and in that regard, I thought it might impact if one or other of us were interested in chair or vice chair. So that was why.
It shouldn't have an impact. I don't believe Heather is in attendance tonight, so that should not have an impact on that. So we should be good.
Okay. And I'm not interested, but thank you.
Okay, no surprise there. So I'm not hearing any other interest in members to serve as chair, so we can put forward Laura's name. We do need an official motion. So can I get a mover and seconder, and then we can have a vote. I have Jordan moving, I have Mary Jo seconding. And if I could have a vote on this. So everybody in favor, just raise your hand on screen, please. Excellent. And Jessica, I don't know if you did virtual hand or if, you could just say you're in favor with your audio. It's just for the people who might be watching the live stream. All right, so I'll just confirm that Jessica has voted in favor of this. So we have Laura as our chair. And is anybody willing to serve as the vice chair or volunteer? Jordan, thank you. Jordan and I had discussed this. I wasn't going to call him out, though. I was going to give him the opportunity. I'm assuming nobody else has a keen interest. So in that case, do we have a mover and a seconder for Jordan Morelli as our vice chair? So I have John and Indira, John moving, and then Indira. And I will call the vote on that. All in favor? Right. Yep, you can vote for yourself, Jordan. Excellent. So now normally what we do is I'd pass the meeting over to the chair right now. Jordan, I can work with you on this as vice chair to go through the agenda if just for technical. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
All right. So for you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So much like the others, we just need a mover and a seconder and we can do a vote. So Jordan, if you want to.
Very good. Yes, the agenda has been circulated. Can we have a mover to accept the agenda as circulated? Lindsay's moving and John seconds. Any discussion, changes? No? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting the agenda as circulated? All right, thank you. Any opposed? All right, that carries. Thank you. We had minutes of the last meeting were circulated. Do you normally do moving and seconding, Derek, for that, or do you just take them on consent?
No, mover and a seconder and a vote, please.
All right, so if somebody would like to move confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, that would be great. Anyone? Helen moves and Lindsay seconds. All right, so any errors or omissions from that set of minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes? Any opposed? All right, that carries. Thank you. I just have to scroll my page. It's hard on without two screens what to do. The next on the agenda is a disclosure of pecuniary interest. And I believe we have somebody, Derek, who wants to speak to that, a city staff member.
So we'll actually cover that under the briefing section. So this is the section where if anybody has a pecuniary interest to declare, they would do so, but I don't believe any agenda items would entail that tonight.
Okay. Okay. So unless anybody thinks they might have a pecuniary interest, we will proceed to delegations. And I'm not aware of any delegations. Derek, do we have any?
Nope, no delegations.
All right, we're moving through this. Next is number 7 on the agenda is briefings. It says Jenna Morley, Director of Legal Services and City Solicitor, will be present to speak to the committee regarding pecuniary interest. So there we are. So Jenna, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, everyone. It was a bit of a trick to ask you to declare a pecuniary interest before I told you what one was. So we apologize for that. My name is Jenna Morley. I'm the Director of Legal Services and City Solicitor for the City of Kingston. And I am here to briefly discuss the city's code of conduct with you, as well as the topic of conflicts of interest. So what is the code of conduct? The code of conduct is a set of written rules and expectations that all members of council and members of committees, including this committee, must adhere to. I assume a copy of the code of conduct has been circulated to you. If not, you can easily find it on the city's website. So under the code of conduct, you as committee members have a responsibility to promote and uphold the purposes of the city. You're required to participate actively in the business of the committee and in good faith. You're also required to uphold the law with the highest degree of ethical behavior and integrity, and to treat all members of staff and the public with respect. A key feature of our code of conduct is you're also required to declare actual and perceived conflicts of interest. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a few moments. So essentially, the code of conduct governs your behavior as members of the committee. The code is very clear that you, as members of the public who are appointed to the committee, are not appointed as elected officials, nor do you represent council in any way. You are appointed at the pleasure of council. So as members of the committee, it's critical for all of you to review the code of conduct and understand your obligations under the code. Of particular interest to this group will probably be Appendix B of the Code of Conduct, which establishes a procedural code for committees. So as I mentioned, the Code of Conduct does require you to take appropriate steps to avoid conflicts of interest, both apparent and real. So this can be a bit of a tough subject to grapple with. Essentially, there's two categories of conflicts of interest. There's apparent or perceived conflicts of interest, and there are real conflicts of interest. So in terms of a real conflict of interest, we have legislation that's called the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and it deals specifically with pecuniary interests, conflicts of interest. Under that act, members of committees like yourselves must avoid direct and indirect pecuniary conflicts of interest. Perhaps the most interesting thing about that legislation is that while it's entirely focused on pecuniary conflicts of interest, it doesn't actually define what constitutes a pecuniary conflict of interest. So we have to derive that from the law. Essentially, a direct pecuniary interest is where you, as a member of the committee, have a financial or economic interest in the matter that's being discussed. So, for example, if the committee is considering a request to grant funding to ABC Corp, and you as a committee member are a shareholder of ABC Corp, you have a direct pecuniary interest in the matter that is being decided. An indirect pecuniary interest can arise when your partner, your spouse, your child, etc., has a financial or economic interest in the matter that's being discussed. So for example, if the committee is discussing funding to ABC Corp and your spouse is the owner of ABC Corp, you have an indirect pecuniary interest in the matter that's being decided. In terms of a perceived or apparent conflict of interest, essentially, the courts have imposed a broader responsibility on members of council and committees to avoid perceived conflicts. So a perceived conflict will exist where it's objectively reasonable in the circumstances that the committee member will be influenced by some sort of private interest. It might not be a direct pecuniary interest, but someone looking at the situation objectively and knowing all of the circumstances might question your ability to be impartial in that circumstance. So in terms of tips to assess whether a particular situation is going to give rise to a conflict of interest, you might consider asking yourself a few questions like, have I been or am I going to be involved with this particular matter in my personal or professional capacity? Are any of my business partners or family members connected with this matter in any way? Am I capable of addressing this matter without bias? Am I coming to this matter with an open mind? Have I considered the public interest as the priority? And finally, what would a reasonable person having knowledge of all of the relevant facts believe about whether I'm being influenced by a personal or business interest if I vote on this matter? So what do you do if a conflict of interest arises? You're required to declare that conflict of interest prior to the matter being considered, as was raised by Derek tonight when he asked if there were any conflicts to be declared. As a member of an advisory committee, you can participate in discussion, but you cannot vote on a matter where you have a conflict of interest. So the clerk's department is available to assist you in the appropriate process for declaring that conflict of interest, but neither the clerk's department nor legal services can tell you whether you have a conflict of interest. That's a matter that you have to determine either alone or in association with the city's integrity commissioner. So that's my brief summary on the code of conduct and conflicts of interest. I know it's very riveting material. I want to thank you all for your service on the community and wish you the best of luck in your endeavors here. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Great. Well, thanks, Jenna, for taking time to be with us tonight. Does anyone have any questions for Jenna? Great. Thanks, Jenna.
Perfect.
All right. Next up is item 8 A, orientation and review of mandate. So maybe Derek, do you want to speak to the mandate, or maybe John Balone?
So the Deputy City Clerk, Janet Janes, will actually be speaking to this, and I believe she has a brief PowerPoint, about 5 slides she's going to go through. So we'll get a chance to get that on the screen and let Janet start.
Very good. Welcome, Janet.
Janet, we're not getting any audio from you, unfortunately.
How about now?
Yep.
Now you're good.
Perfect.
Okay, not sure what happened there. I haven't turned my computer off or changed my settings all day, but as long as you can hear me now, that's all that's important. Welcome everybody. Good to see you again. Just want to take a little bit of time tonight just to go through the mandate of the committee and the sort of the next steps and what you can expect for the next meetings. So the mandate of the committee is very similar to previous iterations of this committee. It's primarily focused on the remuneration that is paid to the mayor and the 12 district councillors. If you've had an opportunity to read the report that was provided to council, the committee will review the current composition paid to the mayor and members of council and establish the percentile group as Kingston's target pay position or an appropriate remuneration to ensure the city's pay position is attained relative to comparator municipalities. So this will provide some guidance for you as to how the committee is going to arrive at its recommendation regarding remuneration. The City of Kingston bylaw number 99-169 has been amended a number of times as this committee has reviewed council remuneration. Commencing January of 2018, the mayor's annual salary was established at $116,856 and the district councillor's annual salary at $40,000. These salaries are adjusted annually to the cost of living as established by the CPI, Consumer Price Index, on the previous October 1st. Council did forego their annual increase in 2021 at their decision in recognition of the financial impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there was not an increase for this year. Also, there's financial remuneration for those councillors who serve as deputy mayor. District councillors volunteer to serve as deputy mayor, and for each month that they serve, they are remunerated an additional $250 of salary to account for the extra travel that they might take to attend events, etc. We'll be providing more details regarding pay and benefits as part of future meetings. The second part of the mandate for this committee is focused on the potential options for administrative support for district councillors. Currently, the district councillors receive administrative support on an ad hoc basis from staff in the clerk's department, but they don't have dedicated administrative staff resources. The mayor has 2 assistants in his office and therefore is not included in this part of the mandate. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, sorry, just had a little delay on my end. Excuse me. So included in this mandate are 2 directions on how the committee will achieve that. So the first step will be to examine the roles and the responsibilities of the mayor and district councillors. And next will be an examination of the current demands and the workloads of the mayor and district councillors based on a review of best practices in comparator municipalities. For previous iterations of this committee, what we've done is staff have gathered the information through a municipal comparator survey and a questionnaire that had both in-person interviews with the current mayor and district councillors, those who were interested in participating. And so in the next 2 slides, I'll give a few more details on how that will take place. Next slide, please. Previous committees have conducted, as I mentioned, a municipal comparator survey that's helped establish a baseline for where Kingston sits compared to other municipalities with respect to remuneration, administrative support, benefits, etc. Comparator municipalities to Kingston as established in the report that was provided to council, include Barrie, Brantford, Chatham-Kent, Guelph, Sudbury, and Thunder Bay. The criteria that we used for determining these comparator municipalities include, they are all municipalities that use either the standing committee or committee of the whole governance model. So in Kingston, for example, we have 4 standing committees of council: the Planning Committee, Administrative Policies Committee, Environment, Infrastructure, and Transportation Policies, and the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee. Each of these committees consists just of councillors. Most of them have 6 councillors. Planning Committee only has 5 councillors. Those committees, unlike this committee, they don't have citizen representation. The role of the standing committees is to examine city policy in a greater detail and make recommendations to council. This is done in an effort to increase efficiency at council. So essentially the councillors who are sitting on those committees are subject matter experts, if you will, and they review things in greater depth and then make a recommendation to council. We also looked at municipalities that have similar population. So in 2016, the census in Kingston had our population at 117,660. We're a little bigger than that now. The municipality comparators operate as a single tier municipality. So that means they're not part of a regional municipality, or they're not sort of a municipality and then a county, kind of like some of our neighbors have a township or a town that then has also a layer of county administration. They're single tier, those would be called, upper tier and lower tier, whereas we're a single tier community in Kingston. And then the last criteria is that the, excuse me, that the municipality elects councillors by district or ward, and that councillors are considered part-time. So that means that each councillor has a specific area that they're elected from rather than being elected at large. Some municipalities do elect their councillors at large, the same way we elect our mayor at large here. And a number of the larger municipalities have councillors that are full-time. Our councillors are considered part-time. So those municipalities that I mentioned earlier are all very similar in structure to Kingston. Of course, the committee could select additional municipalities to participate in the survey. For example, in 2017, Windsor and London were also selected to participate in the survey. Even though they're significantly larger in population, they do have a number of ways that they compare nicely to Kingston in terms of single tier and the way they conduct their elections. So as part of the business later tonight, we'll be reviewing some potential survey questions and the comparator municipalities, and we'll get your approval on those questions so that we can start to undertake the work of distributing the survey to our comparator municipalities. Next slide, please. Previously, what we've done is the committee has prepared a written questionnaire. The committee's approved the content of the questionnaire. Staff will actually do the putting it together for you. And the committee then has also chosen to conduct in-person interviews with mayor and district councillors. We recruited assistance from our human resources colleagues. The interviews were conducted by a small panel of the committee members. So when we get to that point, we will look for volunteers to serve on the interview committee. The committee would then have an opportunity to we would review the previous committee's questionnaires and interview questions at a future meeting before finalizing how this committee wants to move forward. Questions used previously focused on things like what was asked or expected of an individual when they're elected to council. So what's the councillor's perspective on what's expected of them? What does a councillor perceive as their top priorities? We've asked them to provide a breakdown of their duties, including kind of how much time is spent hourly in committee meetings or dealing with constituent issues or other administrative matters. We asked them for input about what technology they use in communicating with their residents and what barriers do they experience in fulfilling their district councillor roles. Next slide, please. And finally, once the committee's gathered all of the necessary data, the committee will be responsible for creating a final report, which will be presented to council. In the past, a member of the committee, it's typically been the chair, has presented that report at a council meeting and answered questions from council on behalf of the committee at that meeting. The final recommendations are to be based on number one, establishing the percentile group for Kingston's target pay position or the appropriate remuneration. And number two, to make recommendations for administrative support for district councillors. So those two pieces that I mentioned were the key pieces of the mandate. I just want to finish by saying now that we have a full committee here tonight, thank you so much for your time to volunteer on this committee. It's really, really beneficial to us, and your knowledge and experience are going to be invaluable to us as we move through this process. So that's the end of my presentation. Blair, if you want to take it down, that's great. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And the city clerk, John Bolognone, is here as well. On his behalf, I will say he's happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Janet. Any questions for Janet or John? Someone's hand is up. I can't see who, sorry. Helen, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and I don't know, do you want us to ask questions now? Sorry, about reviewing the municipal comparators, or will we discuss that?
Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, certainly. You can ask questions now, but we can get into that more too as we sort of go through the work plan. Thanks, Helen, for the question.
And Janet, will you be sticking around for the rest of the meeting as we go through a few of the other agenda items as well then?
I'm here as long as you are, Jordan.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. Okay, any other questions then? All right. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, sorry, Janet, just a quick question. I'm just looking at the material and again, looking ahead, as Helen said, is it to assume that the last time this review was done was 2018? Is that right?
Yes, the committee started its work in 2017, finished its work and made its recommendation in 2018. So this is a process that we've done at the City of Kingston for a number of years, isn't the appropriate word, but number of terms of council. So the clerk's department initiates the process during the last year of a term of council. And then this committee makes recommendations for the next term of council. So we'll do this again in 4 years.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Lindsay?
I'm just curious as far as which department or committee looks at the boundaries and making that decision whether to make the councillors full-time and all of that. Is that a whole separate piece that's determined at council level, or is that a clerk's office assessment every year, or how does that work?
Excuse me, that was actually something that this committee looked at the last time. There was a motion of council that directed the citizen committee to review whether or not councillors should be considered part-time or whether they should be considered full-time. The recommendation of the previous version of this committee was, and this was based on the responses that we received from councillors through the survey and the interview process, is that the majority of councillors felt that staying part-time was beneficial as opposed to full-time, because if you're considered full-time, then you may not be able to hold down employment elsewhere. You can't have two full-time jobs, whereas if you have a full-time job, you can also have a part-time job. So there was definitely recognition that maybe the hours put in are considered full-time in terms of the number of hours that they spend attending meetings and responding to constituents, but that it was still part-time. A certain element is many of the elected officials believe that this is part of their civic duty. It's not just about remuneration, and so the decision, the recommendation from this committee 4 years ago was for councillors to remain part-time, and that decision was upheld by council, and we do not have that direction as part of our mandate this year. So it would be direction from council to review it, and we don't have that direction.
Go ahead, Lindsay. Yeah.
But could that be a recommendation from this committee to council? Just curious.
I don't think that I would say it couldn't be, but it's beyond the scope of what this committee's been asked to look at. So that would be sort of, you know, stepping past what the committee's been asked to do. And so.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can follow up, I think Lindsay was sort of also getting at whether or not this committee has a mandate to make any recommendations on the number of districts that Kingston has. Is that, I think, fair, Lindsay? Yeah, if you're nodding.
Yes, that's true. And that's sort of looking at the big picture of how, you know, you look at when the City of London was mentioned, it's, I'm actually in London right now. And, you know, it's not 500,000, but it's pretty darn close. And there are 14 councillors, but I'm assuming they're full-time. But it's a, you know, much larger population and only 14 councillors. So I look at the whole aspect of, you know, what does a city the size of Kingston, you know, how many councillors should there be, and should it shift to fewer councillors and working full time, or is it fine? And that's sort of what goes through my mind when I'm thinking of this entire process. So
I think that's definitely something that, you know, we can think about as we formulate the questionnaires or the questions for the interviews that we do with members of council. But again, that's not direction that's been provided to this committee, and it would be a direction of council in terms of doing anything like a ward boundary review.
So is that something, Janet, that this committee could make a recommendation or a request to council to give us that mandate early on, or is that something that has to only come from council? And I see maybe Janet, if you can respond, and then Indira, I see your hand is up for next.
Yeah, so we would need that direction from council. That's not something that the committee can just undertake to do without direction from council. I would be of the opinion that that's not something that would be really like a ward boundary review at this time when we've got an election in basically 1 year's time, would be an almost insurmountable piece of work to try and get done between this committee and the next committee. If this is something that this committee feels is worth looking at, then that might be something that, like I say, it could be a question that is posed to councillors as part of the interview process. What are their thoughts? And maybe built into the body of the report as a suggestion or a recommendation for something to consider going forward. But I'm not sure it's something that is feasible before the next election.
Very good, thanks. Indira?
Thanks, Jordan. I just wanted to comment that I think we need to be cognizant of scope creep. The mandate for this committee is pretty tight. And I would be concerned about, just when I think about the logistics and doing the analysis of information, throwing in a few questions to answer a question that is we haven't even been tasked to consider. And I think my last point would be that that sounds to me like an entirely different scope for which the city may have requested a different composition of delegates on the citizen committee to consider. Just my perspective.
No, great points. Thanks, Indira. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the review of the draft work plan, which I believe was circulated as part of the agenda package. And Derek, maybe do you want to take over on this part? Walk us through it.
I can speak to it briefly, but as the person who did help prepare the work plan, so it was presented. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review it. This is not something that I would say is necessarily set in stone. It is changeable as we move forward, but it is a guide to give the committee a sense of what will be happening, as well as a rough schedule of meetings as well. It is based on a lot of the work from previous iterations of the committee. And the goal, as stated in the original report, is that the committee will complete its mandate, I believe, by the end of this year. Unfortunately, we got started a bit late, so that's not possible. So our goal is to complete the mandate by the end of Q1 in 2022. So we also have to factor in, we do have the winter holidays as well, which costs us a bit of time. So anyway, the draft work plan is presented to you. If there's any questions about it or people feel there need to be any changes or alterations, Jordan, we can discuss and decide, or the committee can decide amongst itself. I don't help decide, I just help make it happen.
Great. So as I said, the draft work plan is with the agenda package. And I don't know if people have any comments or questions about it. We do have a couple of tasks set aside for today in this draft work plan. So.
I do have one just comment I would add, Jordan, and we can maybe discuss it as part of a later agenda item. But in terms of future meeting dates, I think the preference from the clerk's department in terms of scheduling would be continue with Wednesday evenings. We have a lot of other committees that typically meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we can discuss that further as part of the, I believe it's agenda item E is where we talk about meeting dates, but I wanted to make that known quickly.
Yeah, no, thanks, Derek. Okay. Do we need to approve it? It just says review here, but are we meant to approve it, or can we just?
It can be done. This one can be done on consent, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, are there any objections to adopting the work plan as circulated with the agenda package? And of course, we can always tweak it in ways as necessary with motions and whatnot. So.
That's correct. As much as I would love the work plan to go smoothly, we know often these things don't happen.
That's right. So we'll use it as our framework for planning, and we'll adjust as necessary. Great. So that takes us to item 8C, which is review of municipal comparators and survey questions. So I think maybe we should take those in turn. So first with the municipal comparators, and then we'll deal with the survey questions second. So we had a list, and I don't see where it went. So maybe Derek or Janet, if you could remind us of what the municipal comparators were, what we've been proposed as comparators, and people can weigh in if there are other ones that we should have. And while you're getting that ready, maybe, are we restricted to Ontario? Like, is there a reason that we aren't looking at maybe what, say, British Columbia or Alberta is doing? Just as examples.
I'll let Janet speak to that. She is on mute though right now.
Thank you for that. Common problem. We've typically used Ontario municipalities because we all operate under the same statute, which is the Ontario Municipal Act. So the expectations of councillors are set out, and the roles of municipal councils and what they can and can't do is the same. Municipal councils in Saskatchewan or British Columbia might have either a much narrower or a much larger scope of power than what an Ontario municipality has. So that's why we've always stuck with Ontario municipalities. And in terms of what those comparators are, I have the list in front of me. So it includes Barrie, Brantford, Chatham-Kent, Guelph, Sudbury, and Thunder Bay. And I believe I mentioned that previously Windsor and London were also asked to be included by the committee, had also asked that staff survey those municipalities as well.
Great. I believe London has a substantially larger population than us, but Windsor.
Yes, they have a population in the range of about 400,000.
Okay, so it's open for discussion. Anyone have any thoughts on whether the half a dozen listed are sufficient, or if we want to add more? Helen?
So I would like to see, if possible, something in Eastern Ontario. And so I know your criteria that you were discussing previously: single tier, how the councillors are elected, standing committee, the whole, the way that the governance unfolds. I'm not familiar with in the other Eastern Ontario, but wondered if you were, number one. And so I looked at a community like Peterborough, which of course is somewhat smaller, Peterborough, or perhaps Clarington, or I think Eastern Ontario is a unique economic zone. That's all that I'm thinking of when I'm suggesting that we look at something in Eastern Ontario. We're not the same as Southwestern Ontario. We're not the same as the North. we're a bit unique in our own economic zone. So that's the only reason why I would like to suggest an Eastern Ontario municipality, but I don't know if they meet the other criteria that you outlined there, Janet.
You're on mute, Janet.
Every time. I'm not sure. I think that Peterborough is single tier. I'm not sure about Clarington. I do know that a little closer to home, Brockville and Gananoque are both single tier municipalities. Now, Gananoque, of course, is substantially smaller than Kingston. Brockville's maybe about half the size. It's not to say that they can't be included. Like I say, in previous versions of this committee, in previous reviews, we've included Windsor and London, which are significantly bigger than Kingston in terms of population, but they are similar in terms of the mechanism that they use for election of their council, which is mayor at large and councillors by district or ward. And they are also operate on a standing committee or a committee of the whole system. So it's hard to find. Kingston can be a bit of a challenge sometimes to find those really ideal comparators, because we're a really big small city, but when you compare us to the big cities, we're a pretty small. You're a pretty small city. You feel like a big fish in a small pond when you were compared to some of the municipalities that are geographically closer to us. But then when you put yourself in the sort of the same boat as those municipalities in the GTA, all of a sudden you're just a little tadpole again. So there's never going to be a municipality that's exactly the same as Kingston. So it's whatever this committee decides, we're happy to do.
Yeah, go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so just a follow up to that then. Like when I look at Peterborough on the website, just sort of while we've been talking, I mean, they do seem to have wards, they have standing, they do have committee structure, and they do seem to be single tier as far as I'm aware. So could we have a motion to put forward another community
So
with
Peterborough
the condition that it meets those criteria?
Sorry, Helen, I just did a little bit of research myself, and Peterborough is actually it is an upper tier
It is,
municipality.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, that's Peterborough County. Sorry.
I'm just looking at a list of Ontario communities by population, and for Eastern Ontario communities in the top 25 by population, in decreasing size, Kingston, Peterborough, Belleville, and Cornwall all make the list of top 25.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could jump in. I stand
please.
corrected. I was looking at, there was a county of Peterborough as well. I was looking at the wrong line on the page that I was looking at. So the city of Peterborough is a single tier municipality, and it has a population of just over 80,000. So it's not that far different in terms of population from Kingston. It's certainly a municipality we can reach out to if that's what the committee would like us to do.
When would we need to have these surveys out by?
Let me take a look at the work plan.
I can speak
First
to that
week in
one,
November.
Janet.
Next week, according to the work plan. So it sort of means us trying to make a decision today, or at least making a decision. And again, I don't know if Peterborough and others here may know more than me about some of the other Eastern Ontario communities. I don't know if Peterborough is somewhat equally representative in terms of economy of Eastern Ontario. I would assume that it is similar, but.
So I have a procedural question for Derek, maybe. Is it possible that are we allowed to have electronic votes? So for example, could we leave it with the city staff to explore these other 4 communities in Eastern Ontario, and then give us a list later this week or early next week of, 7 or 8, 9, however many, and we can pick 6 or so if whatever from that list? Or
I may make a suggestion. Technically, no, the committee cannot advance business outside a public forum, but what I would suggest is, even if there is some doubt as to whether Peterborough or Clarington are appropriate, there's no harm in gathering the information. And then if we find that they're not an appropriate comparator, the committee doesn't have to consider them. So I think that may be a way to go about it, and I will turn it back because I think Indira has something she wants to add. So I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Thank you. Indira, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a methodological question, because I think what I would be accustomed to, I liked what I heard in terms of the criteria, and in an ideal world, what I might imagine is getting, you know, all of them, those very quantifiable measures for all Ontario municipalities, and then we can say, well, what fits, what doesn't, because I do feel a bit like we're being asked to, well, off the top of our head, what might be those communities that we might want to consider. And I don't know that we shouldn't consider, say, Sudbury as an example, as a northern community. So I just wonder if there's a more objective way for us to get, and my preceding question probably about 3 or 4 minutes ago would have been, how were these original ones arrived at? Because perhaps that was the process then, and that then the question is, have there been any material changes to municipalities that we would want to then consider?
I don't know if Janet, if you want to speak to that at all, or. Yeah, go ahead, please, Janet. Or John's hand is up as well.
I will defer to John since he has his hand up.
Sure, yeah. John, go ahead.
Derek, you're stopping me, Derek.
You're a bit garbled right now, John.
Yeah, I'm trying to put my video on as well, and somehow it's being stopped by the host. Which
I've just requested you to turn on your video there, John.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. The criteria was set up based on the comparators that we used in the past on a number of subjects. So those are the comparators we used in the past. There is no problem with reviewing other municipalities as part of this undertaking. We do want to stick to the mandate that was given to us in the criteria, but it doesn't hurt us to take a look at some municipalities outside of the current scope. I learned a new phrase today, scope creep, which I'm interested to pursue that in the future. But this committee, really, nothing is really off the table, but you do have to start in at some place. Jen talked about being able to bring a fulsome report to in the past. If we want to take a look at another half a dozen municipalities, that's something that we can do. Obviously, they weren't included as part of the group from before. I just don't want to spend time picking one or the other. If there's a group that we would like to look at, if you want to look at population, Clarington came up earlier in the discussion. So Clarington is a lower tier municipality in Durham. So they would operate slightly different than the single tier municipality that Kingston is, as well as some of the other comparators. As I said, it's not saying we can't look at them, but council has told us what to do. So we should try to follow council direction as best we can, so that we don't open the law of unintended consequences per se by going down a path that we don't have a mandate for. But we
Thanks, John.
a committee on pretty much everything you guys would like to do.
Great. So I think that, you know, we have the direction from council, and, you know, it's been said that we can survey as many communities as we want. And if they don't meet the criteria, we don't necessarily have to look at them, but we don't want to waste people's time unnecessarily either. So I think with that in mind, it might be reasonable to add 2 or 3 more communities, as long as they, you know, provisionally, and then have city staff verify that they meet the criteria, and if they do, to send out the surveys. Indira, I see your hand up.
Sorry, just wondering whether there are other pieces of business that the city of Kingston undertakes that they look at an identified comparator group that we may then use to inform for this purpose. So in the hospitals, for example, we have our identified peer group, and they meet specific definitions, and we use them across different work processes to sort of stress test our performance. So I just wondered if that may be true with the municipality as well.
Janet or John, do you want to address that? Does Kingston have a standard set of comparator communities that they use for most things?
So Derek, if you can help me with the video. Yes, we do. And these were the ones of the 10 to 12 that we normally do that met the criteria with respect to a single tier, having a standing community governance process, population, and things of that nature. So yes, to compare apples to oranges just because they're fruit sometimes doesn't get you the best response. But we're committed that if we do get some limited communities that you have to take a look at, we would take a look at that based on our criteria and then report back to the committee on whether or not they meet criteria. And then we could take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, John. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is just one of the things that we will consider in making our recommendations, right? So it's, you know, whether we have 6 communities or 7 or 8, it's maybe not going to end up being a big deal. But the floor is still open if people want to, if we can try to reach a consensus here. I don't think we have an emerging consensus on what to do here yet. So.
I would just add though, Jordan, that if I'm recalling correctly, and I read the materials a couple of weeks ago, my recollection is that the mathematical process that was used in determining the benchmark was, I think it was median, might have been mean, I can't remember which it was. So I actually think that the outcome will have a material impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Indira. So with that said, then, do we want to add a couple of communities or not? But does anybody have 1 or 2 communities they'd like to put forward as suggestions? Helen?
Well, I'm still interested in adding a community in Eastern Ontario. So whether that's Belleville, and was it Belleville, Janet, that you mentioned, or Brockville? Brockville.
Belleville's bigger by population, I believe.
Belleville and Brockville are both smaller than Kingston by population. Belleville is a lower tier municipality, I believe. So, but you had mentioned, or I think I'm not sure if you mentioned both of them, Helen. I heard Peterborough and I heard Sudbury. And while the committee's been having some discussion, I just did a little bit of research. I think I mentioned earlier, Peterborough is a single tier municipality and it has a population of about 80,000. They do have a similar system to Kingston with mayor and district councillors. So they meet the criteria that way. You know, they're a little smaller, but they do meet the other 2 criterias. In terms of governance structure and the method of electing the elected officials. Sudbury likewise is a single tier municipality. They have a mayor and district councillors, and they have a population of about 160,000. So a little bigger than Kingston. So you've got a municipality a little bigger, a municipality a little smaller than Kingston, but similar in terms of those other 2 criteria that were set out.
Right. And I think Sudbury, Janet, was on your initial list. So.
Okay, yes. I thought I had heard somebody say Sudbury, and that's why I just wanted to confirm that.
So, I mean, I would be prepared to make a motion if that's what's required, that we add Peterborough and assuming and we don't even need to assume that it meets the criteria, because if it doesn't, when it comes back with the information that the city finds out, then we don't include it. But I would also, if there's an interest amongst the others of adding one of our other neighboring communities like Brockville or Cornwall, I would add that to the motion as well. But
do either of Brockville or Cornwall meet the criteria, Janet? Do you know?
Cornwall does not meet the criteria in that they elect their councillors at large.
Okay.
They don't have district councillors. I'm just checking to see how Brockville does theirs, because they are a single tier municipality, but I'm not sure if they have a ward system.
They're substantially
at large.
Okay.
Okay, well, while Janet's doing that.
We
does
can
anyone-
we can include them. And while I do a little bit of research, you guys can continue.
Yeah, so I can happily make the motion that we include Peterborough and Brockville in the comparators if they meet the three criteria as outlined by the city.
Very good. So that's a motion by Helen. Is there anyone who will second that?
Actually, oh, sorry.
I see a number of seconders. Lindsay, I saw your hand up first. Derek, do you have a point that you want to raise?
I can confirm that Brockville elects their mayor, via at large. They're not ward.
Okay, so then just
Brockville
Peterborough.
won't. So just Peterborough then. All right. So I think the motion is still fine the way it's worded, but maybe we'll change it just to be adding Peterborough to be. Is that okay, Helen?
Yes, that's fine.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
And Lindsay as seconder. Is that okay that we just add? All right.
So, Jordan,
Yes.
we don't necessarily need a motion to make this happen. If you
We'll
want
just
to
do it on
take a look at
consent.
Peterborough,
Yeah.
do it. We'll just do it.
Very good.
No
Very
need
good.
to get bureaucracy on this.
Okay, I'm happy to do things on consent as much as possible. So is there any objection to adding Peterborough to the list? Wonderful. So we will do that, and that will be added to the list of communities we will survey. And now we move on to the survey questions. And I don't know, Eric, where the draft of survey questions are. I don't have it in front of me. So maybe somebody does and they can share screen, or how do we?
Was included with the agenda package, but I can put them on.
Was
the
it?
screen
Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't
No.
scroll down.
No worries.
So-
I can put them on the screen.
Was it the 2018
Oh,
questions
Yeah, I
then?
do see it here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Was it-
2018. Starts on page 6 of the agenda. Sorry about that. It says questions asked, municipal information, mayor remuneration, council member remuneration, mayor benefits, healthcare and pension, and so on. So I'll let, hopefully everybody has it handy and you can scroll through it. And I think that by default, we would just reuse these questions, but we should look at them with a view of, are there any that we want to remove or any that we want to add or anything like that. And perhaps maybe the mandate was slightly different last time. I think Janet said in terms of some of the things that they were considering in their scope last year. So maybe there will be a few things we might want to strike out entirely.
To that point, Jordan, I actually did remove a couple of questions
Okay.
which were asking about part-time versus full-time and those. So these are questions that would still be germane to this committee's mandate.
Okay, so this is a slightly modified version from last year's list. Then. Great. Indira, please.
Sorry, I feel like I'm asking all the questions.
Oh,
Just under the mayor remuneration, I was curious, and particularly Derek, you just clarified, because it was exactly my question about is it relevant to ask around whether it's part-time or full-time? In my world, in compensation administration, that's not relevant. So I was curious that question. It sounded like you maybe removed it from others, so I wondered if it was intentional to keep it as the sub 2 under the mayor section. So there's a question. It's not directly full-time or part-time. It's what are the average number of hours spent monthly on mayoral duties that were kept in. To me, is similar to full-time, part-time question.
I believe that may have just been kept in there by mistake and it wasn't removed. So if the committee feels it is not relevant, then we can definitely strike that.
My suggestion would be to strike it.
that's number 2, Indira, is it, under mayor remuneration?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, is there anybody opposed to striking average number of hours monthly for mayoral duties? Or people want to speak to that first, I guess, Lindsay?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious as to there are going to be municipalities just like the councillors are part-time, the mayor might be part-time as well. But in Kingston, the mayor's full-time position, is it not?
Yes.
So, Indira, were you saying that it's better to say, are you part-time, is the mayor part-time, full-time, or how many hours?
No, just generally from a compensation job evaluation perspective, the number of hours aren't relevant, right? So I guess the question, though, to your point, may be to ask around what's the annualized salary, because that would then give you a level playing field. right? So if one of the municipalities has someone, a mayor that they consider to be 0.8, if they annualize it, then we've got a level playing field, regardless of what the actual amount of time they're aiming to compensate for.
That's fair.
Okay, Helen?
Sorry,
You're on
thank
mute.
you. Yeah, sorry, thank you. And I don't work in HR and understand all the implications, but it would seem to me while the average number of hours is not part of is not part of something that you question with compensation, usually our compensation package is not tied to the position being full-time or part-time. And so when you're doing a compensation review, you're not looking at specifically the number of hours, but when somebody is in a position, there is an expectation that they work X number of hours. So I think this question is germane to the information that we would want to see in terms of a comparison, and not so much in that it's full-time or part-time. But if it turns out that an interview shows that our mayor is working many more hours than a mayor in another municipality, is that not something that we would want to know? But Indira, you know more about HR and policy and processes than I do. So perhaps not, perhaps it's just, is the work getting done or not getting done?
Janet?
Thank you, Jordan. I also will defer to Indira here because she is the HR subject matter expert and not me. I did want to just confirm though that the mayor's position, like councillors, is considered a part-time position. So it's not, like I mentioned earlier, it's considered a part-time position. The mayor and councillors recognize that, sometimes that those hours may add up to be more than what someone might consider full part-time hours, but they are considered part-time positions. And my understanding is that, there may be, sometimes if somebody is employed full-time, they may have conditions in their contract that says they can't be employed elsewhere. And that's why these councillors are one of the reasons why the decision was made by the committee last time to make the recommendation, and council approved that, is to continue with that part-time, because it was felt that that would bring forward the most diverse number of candidates, because if council was considered full-time, that might exclude them from employment elsewhere. And it would enable more people to be able to run for council without limiting their employment opportunities.
And so it avoids conflict of commitment, I guess, issues. And thanks, Janet, for correcting the record on that the mayor is part-time officially. So I don't know though, maybe it seems to me like Indira, you're saying, proposing to remove question 2 and modify question 1 so that we get the annualized sort of full-time equivalent salary. But if we left the 2 questions the way they were, could we not extract the information from that? And then
I think just from a practice perspective, we would want to, so the reason that asking for annualized is helpful is that it allows each municipality to say, well, regardless of how many hours, because there's a difference, and many of us who might be in management would know there's what we're paid for, the number of hours we're paid for, and there's the reality of how many hours we actually work. So my worry about the wording of that question is that it may not inform us in the manner that we think we wish to be informed. So if a municipality says, yes, our mayor works 2,000 hours a year, I would say, well, that's full time. But maybe that municipality is only paying based on a 0.5. So that I think we just need to be cautious of that. And I would presume that the municipality has made a determination of what quantum of time it intends to be compensating the councillors and the mayor for.
so is that the correct language? Is it annualized salary, or is it full-time equivalent annualized salary, or what's the right wording then for question 1?
Well, I'll defer to our clerk experts who would know the vernacular in municipalities. The wording in my world, annualized or full-time equivalent, would be synonymous, but it may not fit the municipal world.
Does John or Janet want to weigh in on the language here? Or Derek?
I'll answer that.
Okay, John, please.
Derek makes a really good point. I mean, to try to annualize hours and whatnot specific for part-time people, it doesn't compute in this world. Some members of council may spend 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week. Who knows how much they spend? And we'll get information from the councillors through the interviews. But at the end of the day, while it would be nice to be able to do what Indira is saying, I think that doesn't work at our level.
And that would be consistent with, these are more like stipends, which are, this is an envelope of money, and you know, we accept that there's going to be variability across the councillors in terms of the actual time and effort that's put in. So
you're 100% correct, Indira. You will see that as part of the interviews and some of the responses that we get. The last couple of times we've done the interviews, it's very far ranging, and to try to pin it in one way to make it consistent all the way through, it doesn't work. I'll share something else on another this. You have some councillors that sit on many boards and committees. You have some councillors that don't sit on as many. At the end of the day, they're still getting the same salary. And who makes the decision of the councillors? It's the electorate every year. So this exercise that we're undertaking is to see whether or not the remuneration that we're providing members of council is consistent with our comparators. At the time, we want to get some additional information that will help us improve the way council does their job. And if there are things that we can recommend that we think might help based on the interview and some of the feedback that we get back from our surveys, that will be a benefit. And this committee will really be doing its job. It's not a simple process, it's very subjective. And that's why the council approved criteria allow for us to be able to provide the response and then justify the response based on the metrics. So we're pleased to help the committee out with wherever they would like to go, keeping in mind that we do have a criteria and we do have a work plan, and we will make sure that we do our job so that council at the end of the day will accept our report. It's this way because it's the community that is basically speaking here. We're all representatives of the community in various fields, and when the report goes through to council, and Laura, I assume, or maybe Jordan will present it, it'll be simply, here's what you asked us to do, here's what we did, here are the numbers, and I doubt there'll be any pushback or anything like that. But it is an important process. Kingston didn't do this before I came here. We introduced this evaluation to make it fair and to make it reasonable. And it worked successfully the 3 times we've done it. We think it will work as well this time as well. And as I keep stressing, stay true to the criteria and stay true to what we're trying to do.
Okay, thanks, John. So if I understand right, it sounds like question 1, the way it's currently phrased, is probably the best way to leave it. And question 2 sounds like really doesn't serve us well to have it there. So we should probably strike question 2. Is there anybody opposed to doing that? Okay, so we'll strike question 2, renumber them appropriately. Before we go on, Derek, just a quick question. Do we have a scheduled ending time, or do we, I know we started at 6:30, but I didn't know when we were meant to end at. So I'm just wondering if, do we have a hard end?
No, the meeting,
us along or what?
No, the meeting can go on as long as it needs to, but I imagine it probably doesn't want to go on too long. So no hard end time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Does anyone have any hard stop times that they need to go to somewhere else before at a specific time? So okay, good. Well, we'll try not to go much past 8:30, but Jessica, do you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, I actually have to head out around 8, so I'll just be leaving a bit early tonight.
Okay, well, we may get done by then, but we'll see where we, I guess, how fast we get through these questions. So that's mayor remuneration. Any other comments about the mayor remuneration question? I guess we should just go category by category. Next up is the council remuneration. Any feedback? No? All right, mayor benefits, healthcare and pension. Any changes, additions, deletions? Give you a minute to read it.
I'll let you know too, Jordan, that the council benefits, healthcare, pension questions are the exact same as the mayor ones.
Okay. Great, so we'll take those together then. Okay, we'll move on. The next is a mayor mileage and travel allowance. And I assume that's the same for council in terms of the questions.
Correct.
Any additions or deletions for those? No? Okay. Mayor administrative assistant and council member administrative assistant. Indira, I see no. Is there, you're good?
I was good with all the rest of the
okay,
questions.
perfect.
So
All right. Good. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any others, so we'll so I'm just going back to the agenda to see where we are here. All right. So I think we can accept those questions as modified then on consent. Any objection to that? No, perfect. So that's what we will do. And that brings us back to the agenda item 8. Now we're on item 8D, consideration of primary and alternate representative for the education sector. Derek.
I can explain this one quickly. In terms of recruitment, the city reaches out to representatives from Queens, St. Lawrence, and RMC. And traditionally what happens is one of those 3 representatives becomes the education sector rep, and the others serve as alternates in case they need to fill in. So in this case, we have Helen from St. Lawrence and we had Heather Cole from Queens. Helen and Heather have discussed, and it has been chosen by them that Helen will serve as our primary rep and Heather our alternate rep. So Helen hasn't stopped me, so I assume I'm correct in that. And all that we need to do that is this requires a formal motion. So just a mover, seconder, and vote, Jordan.
So a mover for accepting Helen as primary and Heather as this alternate, the secondary education sector rep. Anyone wish to move that? Indira moves, seconder. Mary Jo seconds. Thank you. Any discussion? I'll just say when I introduced myself, I probably didn't do a very good job at the outset because all I said was I was from Queens, but I'm actually here as the Labor Council representative, so I should have said that. Sorry. So any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you both, and thank you, Helen and Heather, for agreeing amongst yourselves how to proceed there. The next item of discussion is confirmation of future meeting dates. And so I think we've been told that Wednesdays are the date that we should probably stick with. But I think there's some desire to debate over what time we start at. Derek sent out an email with some ranked starting times, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I think that there was some suggestion that maybe we take the top 2 or 3 and just vote on those to try to choose the one with the clearly winning number. So maybe Derek, do you have those handy, the top 2 or 3?
I do.
On your poll, please?
So from the votes we received, 6 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. both received 4 votes, and 5 p.m. received 3. So what we could do is a simple runoff vote of these 3 times just by a show of hands, and first vote, the one with the least will be dropped, and then we'll vote on the last 2 times. This is that's a proposal, so I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chair, and the committee if that's how you wish to go, and then I can help run that.
I think that sounds reasonable, unless there's anybody who has like hard stops that they can't make a start time at 5 o'clock or 5:30 o'clock. Does anybody have such a barrier? Okay, so why don't we then proceed as Derek suggested, and I guess how do we do this, Derek? Sorry.
I think if I understand a runoff vote properly, and this
Yeah.
was Indira's suggestion, so she can correct me, is everybody has one vote,
Okay,
and we will put forward 3 times, and then we'll drop the time that has the least amount of votes, and then do another vote with the 2 remaining times. And everybody gets to vote again. So it's almost like a bit of like a ranked choice ballot, so to speak.
yeah, okay. I just wonder if we maybe should vote twice for the first round. Like everybody gets 2 votes the first round. Just to, maybe Mary Jo wants to say something. We'll
Be done
think
too.
about it in the meantime. Yeah, Mary Jo, go ahead.
Just a quick question. When you were talking about Wednesdays, I wasn't clear whether you had decided on which Wednesday in a month. I've got Wednesdays fully booked for the 3rd and 4th of every month.
Okay, so
So
the draft work plan did have some suggested, well, it just said week of November 15th, week of November 29th, and so on. So presumably it would be the Wednesday in that week, whatever those happen to be. So probably like the 18th and December 1st or something. I'm not sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just a problem for me, but I'm just looking at the calendar.
Yeah, it's always hard with more than 3 people to find dates and times that work for everybody. So as long as you can make most of them, I think we're probably okay to proceed. What's quorum, Derek? 4?
Committee, I believe, has 1, 2, 3, 7, has 8 members, so quorum would be 5. It's 50% plus 1.
Yeah.
And we
Okay.
can always reschedule meetings if quorum is an issue. That does happen frequently at all meetings. So
Okay, well, why don't we vote? Maybe Derek, I'll let you run the vote just so that I can also vote, and it's a little easier. But why don't we do it so that in the first round, everybody gets 2 votes amongst the 3 options of 6 o'clock, 5:30, and 5 o'clock for start times.
that sounds good. I will do that. And just for Jessica, I will keep an eye for if you use the raise hand function, I'll make sure to confirm that your vote. So we'll start with so 2 votes, everybody. 5 o'clock. Anybody's preference is 5 o'clock. All right, I am seeing 3 hands and none from Jessica. So 5:30 now. Seeing all the hands, so we might have a consensus already. And then 6 o'clock. I'm seeing 3 hands as well. So the vote ended up being unanimous at 5:30, and then 5 and 6 o'clock with 3. So in that case, are we comfortable then, Jordan, with 5:30?
Yeah, I think that's unless anybody wishes to object, I think it's pretty obvious it's unanimous there. So. All right, so 5:30 is our start time on Wednesdays in the weeks in the draft agenda, draft work plan, at least for the next while, unless we find out we need more meetings or fewer meetings, or we forgot that there was a special religious holiday on one of them or something like that.
So what I can do, Mr. Chair, is circulate an updated work plan to people that actually have hard dates in them, so that way it's easier for calendars. So I will do that tomorrow.
That would be great. And maybe also, if it's possible, can you send out calendar invites, like Outlook invites or something along those lines? Wonderful.
Well, certainly I will make them for myself so I can share them with everybody else.
Perfect. Great. That brings us to item number 9 on the agenda, motions, and I don't believe we have any unless somebody wishes to make one. John, I see, are you wanting to say something?
Yes, just briefly, as we end our at least the first meeting that I've attended, I just want to thank everybody for their full participation this evening. I think we had a great team together. We look forward to doing.
I think John just got dumped on us.
I believe the clerk is having some connectivity issues, but I think we got the gist of his comments.
Yes, so thank you. Very good. Sorry, I'm just so yeah, motions and notice of motions, we have none. So that takes that. Correspondence, there was one item listed there. Correspondence received from Derek Oche regarding draft work plan and background information. So everybody has received that, I believe. And the date of the next meeting is, I believe, November 3rd is the Wednesday in the week of November 1st.
Just to correct the November 1st, that time in the calendar, and sorry, I muted you there by mistake, Jordan, is when I'm sending out the survey. So the next committee meeting would be on the 17th.
17th of November. Great. So hopefully the November 17th works for everyone. Yes, Mary Jo.
Yeah, in November, we have 2 Wednesday meetings for our board and AGM. So the 17th and the 24th, I'm unavailable, just so that you know.
Is it possible, Derek, we could move it earlier a week to the 10th? Or would we not have things ready in time?
So it would only be one meeting that Mary Jo would miss, the one on the 17th. The one on the week of the 29th will actually be December 1st is the date. And the meeting on the 17th, it's a discussion about the council questionnaire and interviews, but that is actually going to be finalized at the following meeting. So Mary Jo will still have an opportunity to participate in that discussion. So I think not to cut off, but I think we should be able to proceed.
Yeah, no, that seems reasonable, I think. So. Good, thanks. I saw the thumbs up. So thank you, Mary Jo. So unless anyone has any other business, then we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Do you quickly need a motion to adjourn?